Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of 0 Hour. 0 Hour is the time when an operation starts and when we start to execute. So the purpose of 0 Hour is to talk to safety, HR, and business professionals, all in the effort to educate you on our trials and processes. So today's guest is Ashley McKarney. Ashley has over 9 years of experience specializing in human resources, leadership, organizational development, and business management in a variety of industries, including nonprofit, finance, retail, and publicly traded service organizations. Throughout her career, Ashley has built comprehensive human resource functions, coached leaders, managed employee relations, and worked with senior executives to increase engagement and strategic organizational growth. Ashley is a CPHR candidate and holds a Bachelor of Commerce Degree with a major in Entrepreneurship and Small Business and a minor in Human Resources and Strategic Management and Organization. Ashley founded Involvee Consulting with a goal of working with engaged leaders and business owners to improve their HR practices, provide them with ongoing expert support, and to support their employees to improve working conditions and organizational culture. So today we're going to talk about COVID, relaunch strategies, and some issues that companies might be facing. So let's get to it. Hey, Ashley, how's it going?
Good, Jackson. How are you?
Not too bad. How'd the intro do?
Love it. Thank you so much. That was an awesome introduction. I realized my bio is a little long, so thank you for everybody watching.
Not a problem. Hey, need to find out who you are. One day I should probably tell people who I am and why the hell I'm doing this, but hey, we'll get to another day. So let's talk about what's on everyone's mind right now, and we can't really escape it, is COVID.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you're doing unless you're living under a box or in the woods somewhere and don't have access to social media or the news. COVID's on the top of everyone's mind.
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
So we are in stage 1 of the relaunch right now, right? So we started to open back up to businesses and operations, and people are starting to come back to work. Mm-hmm. And depending on how this goes, if we don't have a spike in cases, we're going to go to stage 2, you know? Right now, we only have, 679 active cases. So we're doing good, and we got to keep that at bay, and we got to follow proper policies and procedures and make sure that, our workers are going back and we're protecting them and our operations when we go back there. So, how do we rebuild confidence in the workforce for staff to begin to return to work, in your words? How do we actually approach that?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question that's going to be on a lot of business owners' minds, or at least leaders within the organization. So the first thing I'm going to say is just communicate. Over communication is really great because employees, perception is reality. And so whether they hear it from you or they hear the rumor mill, as we all know, the telephone game gets played and the grapevine happens within workplaces. And so if one person says something, it grows into this big potential worry, right? And then it gets all of the employees kind of off their game a little bit. So Number one is just communicate. Communicate your plan. As a leader, let your staff know we're all in this for the first time together. We've never had a pandemic like this. So we're figuring it out as we go. And all of us are bound to make mistakes. So let's work with each other. Let's build some empathy. And let's remember that we all have the same common goal of getting back to work and building revenue and keeping businesses open. The other thing that I would say is create a plan and communicate that plan for your reopening. So have it in writing, anticipate some frequently asked questions, talk about, are you going to have directional walkways in your office? Are you going to have sanitization spots? What are the requirements for staff to come back and what guidelines do they have to follow? And do you have a gradual return to work for employees, whether that's offset days or offset hours, so that you're not bringing back your whole office at the same time? And then also in that plan, communicate, what if somebody gets sick? What if somebody, heaven forbid, tests positive? what is your plan then? Because that will put people at ease that you are looking out for them and that you're protecting them and their safety. And I think that's one of the biggest things to rebuild that confidence as people start to come back to the workforce. The only other thing I'll say to that is, this is not the time to be the policy police. This is not the time to say, oh, your attendance, oh, your requirements here. We all have expectations as employees and we all have a job to do, and it's okay to hold people to that. But to fine red letter your entire policy and say, oh, you didn't follow these, this isn't the time for that. We have to be empathetic, as I said, and we have to make sure that, we're open-minded and we're taking things kind of more fluidly than rigidly.
Fair enough. Yeah. So resources.
Yeah.
The government websites, right? Alberta.ca, they have guidelines for every industry on a strategy to reopen. Mm-hmm. So I would recommend that employers, if you don't have an internal health and safety department or an HR department, that you go check out Alberta.ca. If you're in Alberta, if you're in another province or jurisdiction, your government will have this too. You can message us if you need help with the links, but there is a guideline for everything. Okay, so you need to educate yourself on it, and you need to know actually how to screen your workers, right? So in a health and safety standpoint, we've had fitness for duty assessments forever, right? Mm-hmm. Or we've had it on paper and we've hoped people are following them. Now is a good time to do fitness for duty assessments, right? Yeah. Most construction companies for this relaunch, we have to have them. They're checking temperatures at gates. They have a strict guideline to do this. Mm-hmm. But make sure you do communicate that to your workers of, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. And this is for the safety of you and everyone else in your office or your job site, right? So based on the guidelines of this, we have a 10-day isolation policy right now if you're just showing symptoms of a runny nose, fever, cough, and it's not COVID related, right? So people need to be aware of that.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll add to that is, as you said, there's a lot of organizations that are doing a fitness for duty when you arrive, such as temperatures, such as, some are going to fill out a form to say, do you have any symptoms? Have you traveled in the last little while? Have you been around somebody? Things like that. So the only things I'll caution for employers there is, A, it needs to be optional because you can't encroach on people's rights if they refuse, right? And the second thing is you have to manage that confidential information. So if you're just having them do it and then say, my temperature is X, that's a verbal conversation. As long as it's private, you're fine. If you're recording information or asking them to fill out a form, just make sure that you treat that with highly sensitive information and reach out to a professional if you're unsure on, the guidelines for keeping that personal information.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Weird how there's laws and regulations for absolutely everything we do in business.
Everything.
And owners really do need to educate themselves on these.
Yeah, it's very true.
Or rely on professionals who do know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So how can an employer effectively communicate the new processes and return to work plans with its employees?
Yeah. So again, communication of all channels is really important because you've got people with different learning styles, different, communication abilities right now. And I'd hope that everybody's available through email. And then one step further would be a virtual team meeting. If you can't all be in the office at the same time. So make sure you appeal to everybody in written and verbal communication forms if you can. And then again, that plan that I talked about earlier and the regulations that you talked about, make sure you put everything down and you have contingency plans for things. And if an employee asks a question that maybe you haven't thought of, thank them for it and put it in a frequently asked questions jar so that everybody else can come back and read what else has been talked about. And the other thing that I would suggest, and this is a best practice that I've learned through one of my clients, is send out an email to your staff. If you have the flexibility, send out an email to all your staff that are currently working virtually and say, question A, do you want to come back to work? And if so, or do you want to come back to the office, I should say? If so, when? So now, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, or never, right? So that you can gauge how they are working from home. And if you have the opportunity to allow them to work from home forever, then present that as an option. There's a lot of people that are out there right now saying, oh, I love working from home. This is great. I can do laundry and then I can come back to work and I can cook my own lunch, and they have flexibility. The people that we don't hear from are those people that aren't okay working from home, that aren't mentally mentally okay, right? And we have to do those mental checks because there's a lot of mental illnesses that are coming out of COVID, whether it's addiction or just social interaction or things like that. And so we have to make sure we ask the question, because there are some people that are better at work, interacting with people day to day, and have that routine and aren't okay with work blending in with home. And so we have to manage that from an HR standpoint and a wellness standpoint. And so the second question on that survey could be, when you do return from work, how much do you want to be at home and how much do you want to be at work, right? All at home, all at work, or a mixture of the two. And so then you're asking for that feedback and you're involving your employees in the process, which then gives them buy-in and allows them to be more engaged in your reopen plan. So you can't communicate enough as long as your message is consistent.
I agree. Just like anything with health and safety or HR, we have legislation, regulations, best practices, guidelines. But when we develop something, or at least when I do, when it comes to a health and safety perspective or operational procedure, I'll base everything off of the guidelines and the legislation and the law and everything that we have to put in there. But I'm not going to tell you how to do it without getting input from a management team or the workers involved in the work. Because look, I don't do what you do, right? I'm aware of what you do. I'm educated in all this other stuff. And maybe I have done some of it, but I want your input, right? I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And because then we're actually going to get the buy-in. If you come in and you dictate this is how it is, like it or get out, right? Then we're getting into a whole bunch of other issues from an HR perspective or an operational perspective, and you're not going to be efficient in what you're doing. Right.
And I think it's also about, you touch on that legislation and it's so important, but it's also about interpreting the legislation and then converting it to, I say, common language, right? If you copy and paste something off Employment Standards website or the Alberta Health Services website with regards to COVID, and you push that out to your employees, they're going to look at you going, what does this mean, right? It's like the common employee reading a bunch of legal jargon. The message won't get conveyed and everybody might interpret it differently. So I encourage you to take the time, or have an expert assist you, taking the time to interpret the language, apply it to your business, and then communicate it out to your staff so that they understand it, because that's going to be a big key.
I agree.
Yeah.
Communication is so much, and especially in our industries. It's funny how many times I'll put something out and then someone will go, hey, where do I find this? Or what does this mean? And you go, you signed off on it. What do you mean? Like you blindly just signed this document that I sent you. That's awesome. You actually owe me some of your paycheck. That's what that says.
And I think communication for granted, right? Sometimes it's, I've said it once, they heard me, right? And as you and I both know, in both of our industries, it's repetition, and then it will eventually sink in. And that's super important right now for all of the COVID stuff. And so we just have to make sure that we've communicated enough and through enough channels and in enough different ways that it's actually reached everybody on our team, right? So both safety and HR, that's really paramount.
It's like, isn't it average of 7 times it takes someone to be told something or shown something in a combination until they actually click and get it?
Yep, exactly.
So we were talking about remote work, right? Everyone is adapted in some way or form, right, for a remote work setting. I love it because my business was set up this way to begin with.
So was mine.
Yeah, it was really good. But for those who haven't and had to adapt, how can an employer properly monitor remote work if we have to, right? How do we make sure that people are efficient and they're actually getting their tasks done?
Yeah. So I've heard a big outlier comment from some employers being like, can I remotely monitor their computer use? And can I put a camera on their computer so that I can monitor how much time they're sitting at their desk and they're actually working and not on Facebook or other things? And the answer is probably no. There is a lot of risk there. There is a lot of openings there for the employer to take on a lot of risk. So if you want something like that, or you're interested in something like that, please reach out to your legal team, because I am not a legal expert. But if you're looking more day to day, then, first of all, set expectations with your employees. Say, your hours are 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. Or alternatively, it's, look, I don't care when you get your work done within a 24-hour day. Just make sure you're visible to clients and you're visible to your fellow employees if you need to get jobs done, right? And that allows people to adapt around their family, because we all know kids are home. You're a teacher, you're a parent, you're an employee, you're a manager, you're a leader. You've got so many different hats on during the day that a lot of people would appreciate that flexibility. But as the employer, we can give them the boundaries that we need to get the business done, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, I would just set out that. Next, I would definitely follow up on deliverables. So if you haven't already set these up, or if you are doing one-on-ones with your employees, continue doing them. Whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, set that one-on-one time for you and each of your direct reports, or your, subordinates that, you may not have a direct line to, but a dotted line to, and make sure you're asking them, how are they doing? How are they feeling with the remote work? Are they feeling that they've got enough work to do, or are they overworked? And just have those touch points so that if they are overwhelmed, you catch it early instead of them being so overwhelmed you've now got a problem. And then, you can do something like a daily work report. So you can send out either virtually, there's a bunch of systems that allow you to track your time, or you can just do it manually on a piece of paper. And you can ask your employees, look, between your hours within the day, I need you to report what you're doing. And, consultants do it all the time. Legal professionals do it all the time. And you're recording your time in 15-minute increments because you're billable hours. And so even if your employees aren't billable hours, I would still say, hey, ask them to record their time so that you have an idea of what your employees are spending their time on, right? And then that's not an invasion of their privacy. It's just more on that accountability stream. And then just verify that they're actively, participating in meetings. I've heard a number of stories where, students in school will take a picture of themselves and then post it on their Google camera so that they can be attending school, but not actually in front of the camera, right? There's some really tricky things going on now. And so just make sure that they're actively participating if you expect them to.
Yeah, I'm not really here. These are just automated responses that I'm trying to engage these questions with. So
neither am I. Last night, right?
yeah, exactly. Live. So when I look at it from a remote work setting, I know it's not possible for everyone to adapt this mindset, but I'm not paying for the person's time. I am, right? But I'm paying them to execute tasks.
Correct.
Right? So if we're doing our client management, our relations properly, as tasks come in, there's daily, weekly, monthly tasks that need to be accomplished. Mm-hmm. So I don't care when you do them, as long as they're done. Right? So I have execution task lists. If this gets done and you're more efficient at it, well, that doesn't mean I need to pay you less. You're doing a great job. Right? So I'm not paying you for your minutes of your soul that you're giving me. I'm trying to be efficient in getting this work done, right? And that's how I've always looked at it from an administrative office perspective. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to physical on-site work, well, okay, yeah, you're there. You unfortunately, the client still says, we need you for 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. This is what you're doing. Please do this work. And that's a different outlook, right? But that's what you're paid to do. If we could all get paid piecework, you'd see a lot more efficiency in construction and industries.
Well, I think so. And I think this pandemic has really shifted the workforce. There's a lot of articles on this, so I'm not preaching something new here. But, in the past, there's been a lot of mentalities in the workforce that if I don't see you at your desk, you're not working, or I don't think you're being productive, or I'm paying you to do nothing, right? When in reality, when people attend work 8 to 5, there's a lot of unproductive time. If you think of walking from other desks, walking to get coffee, having that morning chat 4 or 5 times with different employees, right? Like there's a lot of unproductive time. And so I think productivity is going to rise with this new work from home mentality. But then, as you said, like it all comes back to what are we going to be okay with, and how have our mentality shifted to that piecework so that we can say it's not about your 8 to 5, it's about your deliverables, right? And some organizations have got that pre-COVID, some have figured it out during COVID, and we're working with others, as you know, to kind of get there, right? So, yeah.
Well, and I bring this back to like construction supervision and coordination days, and the amount of times you'd walk through an office and people would be on Facebook or on games or trying to switch their browser over real quickly, and you're like, yeah, we all see you.
Yeah, this isn't our first rodeo.
Yeah, like, hell, I do it. I would do it half the time too. I'm like, I am here for 16 hours a day. Okay, 4 hours I just tuned out. Okay. In between everyone's guilty of it, right? So I think it's trying to be more efficient and set those tasks. So it's interesting. And those who are having a challenge adapting, I would look at pretty much a look at yourself on your management style, right? And your expectations, and set those guidelines and kind of build from there. But that's a whole other topic we can talk for hours on. That's
transformational leadership happening this Saturday.
Yeah. Hey, there's a plug. What do you got going on this Saturday?
Speaking at Transformational Leadership Summit 2.0 through Syndicate. So tickets are free and it's available 8 to 4 on Saturday. We've got some fabulous speakers, including Jamie Soleil, the previous Olympic athlete and gold medalist, as well as a number of our syndicate teams. So we've got a great lineup of speakers. Anyways, we don't have to talk about that today, but thanks for the plug.
No problem. Okay, so one more question we had on board here is, what do we do if an employee refuses to return to work?
Yeah, so I mean, you're going to have a lot of way in there with regards to occupational health and safety guidelines, right? Because there's refusal to work based on unsafe work conditions. But then, you know, if your employee comes to you and says, I refuse to work, I think the first question is why. You know, what are you refusing about the job? And, you know, if it's safety related, I'll refer to you, Jackson. And if it's, look, I don't have childcare, or I'm taking care of somebody that's sick, or heaven forbid, you know, somebody in my home is positive for COVID, therefore I physically can't work. We have to understand the refusal and then, you know, take the next steps from there.
Absolutely. So from a health and safety standpoint, if work is not safe, we say you have a right to refuse. You have an obligation to refuse unsafe work. And I can go on a whole bunch of tangents on people who haven't done this and the outcome that happens from it. All right. Usually a serious injury or a fatality. So if something is not safe, refuse it. Your employer has to document it, and there has to be a formal investigation done on this. Okay.
Right.
So with that, that will involve your health and safety rep. Remember, if you have 5 to 19 people in your company, you need one legally. If you don't, you should call me. Or if you have 20 plus employees, you have to have a joint health and safety committee with a fully functioning health and safety management system. And you have to meet on a quarterly basis. Again, if you don't have this, you should reach out because we will help you. All right. This all comes back down into higher administrative penalties. So if we don't investigate and we don't actually look into these things, there's $10,000 administrative penalties on the spot now from an Alberta ordinance perspective. Okay, if someone actually gets hurt from if we refuse work, something happens, it wasn't dealt with, you know, now we're up to jail time. Right. So we need to make sure that we're documenting and investigating these procedures. So,
and I think a lot of what you spoke to, I mean, you have a lot more regulations that have a consequence, right, with jail time and fines and things like that than specifically HR, right? But HR and occupational health and safety bleeds together so much with regards to workplace violence prevention, safety, you know, all these different things now that, you know, health and safety and HR need to work really closely together. And I think a lot of what's going on in organizations isn't malicious. It's not, well, I know the regulation, but I'm not going to do that. I think it's more just, I don't understand it. And so if you come up across a question that you don't understand, know that it could have serious implications and it could have culture implications for your business, or branding implications for how others see your business. And so reach out to professionals, you know, reach out to legal counsel and get the answers, even if it costs you a little bit of money today. It'll save you tons of money and time and energy in the end. I think you said it best the other day where you said, look, we can come in proactively and it's going to be a little bit of money at the beginning. But if we come in reactively, the bill's going to be a lot bigger, right?
Pay us now, pay us later. It's always more later.
Exactly. Right? And so, you know, it takes time to be proactive, but it's a good practice to get into, to have those key people in your corner that can be your advisors.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's funny. I say, you know, everything just resorted back to money right there. we're always available for questions. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Like, yeah, you know, there's so many professionals out there. If you just need guidance and a little bit of education, we will always help you out, right? And the information's free. I don't want to tell anyone this, but it's free. It's on the internet. Okay, it's the interpretation and it's the guidance to figure it out.
And the application too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So do you have the time? Do you have the money? Do you have the resources? Do you have the effort that you want to put into it? And, you know, most people don't. That's why we all have jobs.
And I think going back to your point, you know, while we're all here to make money in whatever business we're in, I think the entrepreneurs, at least you and I can speak for, are really here to help small businesses do it right. And we're passionate about what we do. And so those introductory phone calls, those, hey, I have a hot button question, I just need some help. Yeah, you know, just give us a call. Our numbers are on our websites. We can easily assist and provide guidance. And then should the relationship need to continue, then we can talk about other things. But we'd rather help you out for free and figure something out if you're in a bind than you get into a bigger mess because you didn't pick up the phone. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how are people going to reach out to you, Ashley?
So I'm available on my website at involvy.ca. You can also reach out to me at ashley@involvy.ca for my email. And my phone number is on my website, but 780-966-3651. You can also reach me on most social media channels, but most actively on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, looking at our comments, we have a lot of support coming in. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
No real questions. So I think we're done for the day. If anyone has some questions, you can always reach back out on our social media channels or hit us up on pretty much all the contacts we're going to list after this. And Ashley, thank you for being a guest on episode 2 of 0 Hour.
Thanks for having me, Jackson. Look forward to the next one.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Have a great lunch and the rest of your day. Take care.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.